Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Today is a day I thought would never come. Ready for this? Former Wells Fargo executive headed to prison. They're actually sending a banker to jail for what they did. Usually they get off by paying a fine. This one's actually going to spend some time behind bars. So Mark, thanks for sending me the story from thestreet.com. Michael Tedder wrote it. Wells Fargo's former head of retail banking pleaded guilty to a criminal charge of obstructing a bank examination. So she's not going to jail for what she did that caused all the problems. She's going to jail for apparently not playing along in the investigation. And other people, by the way, should be going to jail for this. So she's the Wells Fargo former head of retail banking. She agreed to plead guilty to a criminal charge of obstructing a bank examination, according to the Justice Department. She was once a top executive at the bank. She's entered into a plea agreement which calls for a sentence of up to 16 months. So she's agreed to the plea deal, but we don't know what she's going to get. She could get up to 16 months. The skeptics in my audience, and I don't blame you, are going to say, well, I'll believe it when I see it, because up to 16 could be no time in jail. It could be. She was in charge of Wells Fargo's banking branches when it opened millions of fake bank accounts in real customers' names, resulting in a scandal that broke in 2016 and led to the ousting of two successive chief executives. She had consistently denied any wrongdoing, but now is the first high-ranking Wells Fargo executive to face criminal charges for the scandal. And some people didn't understand what happened, so let me tell you. If you had a checking account at Wells Fargo that you had money in, they were paying people at the banks a bonus if they could get people to open up more accounts. So if you went in one day and they said, hey, you've got a checking account, would you like a savings account? You go, no, I wouldn't, but thank you. And you leave. The person might then open up a savings account in your name as if you'd said yes, and then take some money out of your checking account and put it into your savings account. And there were documented examples where people had that done to them. Money was removed from one of their accounts without their permission, put into another account that they didn't authorize. And because of that, they had checks bounce and all kinds of bad things happen. And it didn't just happen once or twice. It happened a remarkably large number of times. And so not only should this person go to jail, but every single employee who did that should go to jail. So if I have a bank account, one bank account at a bank, if somebody at that bank account fraudulently opens up another account in my name and then takes money without my permission from my first account and puts it into my fake second account, yes, they should go to jail for that. So the fact that they're only sending one person to jail is, of course, a slap in the face. But at least it's something, right? So prosecutors argued that the woman here enabled bank employees to use illegal tactics in order to hit Wells Fargo's aggressive sales targets. So Wells Fargo apparently set up sales targets and said, if you are one of the people working in our retail branch, we want you to open 10 new accounts this week. And on Friday, when you haven't opened any, you open up 10 fake ones. Well, you know something? Although the people who are asking you to hit these unrealistic figures have a part in this, the fact that you did that, it's criminal. It is criminal. So some staffers started using their own contact information on forums to prevent customers from discovering the fake accounts. So again, using the example I gave earlier, you come into the bank and I say, would you like to open a savings account? You go, no. I go, okay, you leave. I open up a savings account in your name, but have the statements sent to my address. Yeah, that's on the up and up. In 2015, as the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency began to examine the bank's sales tactics, the former head of retail banking we're talking about here helped prepare a memo in which prosecutors say she concealed details about the scope and the scale of the bank's actions. Obstructing an investigation compromises the mission of those seeking the truth, and we will hold accountable any individual attempts to conceal wrongdoing, says the acting U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California. So they're going to get this person in trouble, and she's pled guilty to it, for obstructing the investigation into the wrongdoing. But why aren't they punishing all of the people who are doing the wrongdoing? Because we know there are a lot of them doing that. There's a lot of doings there. Meanwhile, the woman's lawyer and a Wells Fargo spokesperson have declined to comment. Meanwhile, the office of the U.S. Attorney there in Central District of California has not indicated whether federal prosecutors plan to pursue cases against other executives. Her former boss, the bank's chief executive from 2007 to 2016, has not faced criminal charges. In 2020, he paid a $17.5 million fine and accepted a lifetime ban from the banking industry to settle civil charges brought by the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So the feds came in and looked at the bank and said, what you guys are doing here is crazy. We think you are doing something here bad. And he said, well, how about this? I'll pay a $17.5 million fine, and I'll never bank again as an executive in the banking industry. And the Fed said, oh, okay. Meanwhile, this woman we're talking about here originally had decided to fight the charges, but has now agreed to pay $17 million to settle them. But that is less than the $25 million that the regulators had previously sought. So apparently she negotiated that down. Wells Fargo ended up paying billions of dollars in fines for opening accounts without customers' authorization, which led to some customers losing their homes. Last year, the bank incurred a $1.7 billion fine imposed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for errors in recording home and auto loan payments. And since 2018, it has operated under a draconian asset cap restriction imposed by the Federal Reserve. In 2020, the U.S. Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission issued a $3 billion fine against Wells Fargo. And the one thing that all those numbers tell me is the fact that the company can quietly absorb a $1 billion fine and just keep rolling like nothing's out of the ordinary convinces me that it's like they're printing money over there. I mean, how do they make this much money that to them it's like, oh, another $3 billion fine. Oh, well, okay. But I remember when I first heard about this story, because I don't bank with Wells Fargo, so it didn't happen to me. But I remember hearing about this going, that is crazy. How did that happen for so long? And you discover that, oh, it went all the way to the almost top. Not quite the top, because I think there have not been any allegations that this woman's boss, who is the chief executive, had directed this or known about this, although there was a fine involved, but we're not sure what that's for. But here, she's the one who drafted the memo that attempted to throw the investigators off the trail. And it's such a crazy idea, but there were countless stories about people who'd gone into the bank, had one account there, and then later on discovered they had 3 accounts there. And occasionally it would be more than one account of the same type, meaning that you had that one checking account you knew about, you've got 2 savings accounts that you didn't know about. But money was taken from your checking account and put into your savings accounts, plural, without telling you. So as you wrote checks, if you were living really close to the edge there, your checks would start bouncing, despite the fact that they shouldn't. And of course, the bank, I'm trying to remember now, does Wells Fargo charge you a fee if you bounce a check? I'm trying to remember that. Oh, that's right. They charge you a gigantic fee if you bounce checks, and they make more money off of you. And there was a point in time where people were coming at the bank going, I don't understand. Why is a check bouncing from this account that's got money in it? Oh, there's not as much money in there as you thought it was. Why not? Well, some of it got transferred into your savings account by Jason over in accounts. What? I never talked to him. Well, his address is on the statements for these savings accounts of yours. You didn't know that? No, I didn't know that. So I will tell you that I had a Wells Fargo account when I lived in California going to law school. And the debit card, the ATM card, is really cool. It had a really, really cool set of artwork on the front. Stagecoach, and it was zooming along through the desert, and I think it was throwing up a dust storm behind it. But other than that, that's my only experience with Wells Fargo. Is I banked there for a couple of years back in 89 through 91. So there you go. This is a day we thought we'd never see, but a bank executive headed to prison. But that's just one person. And there were many more people involved in this scam who aren't going to prison. And that's the sad part. So former Wells Fargo executive headed to prison. TheStreet.com published it. Michael Tedder wrote it. And Mark sent me a note and said, Steve, I know you've got a million versions of this. I'm just piling on at this point. No, Mark, believe it or not, this is the only version I got sent to me. It was sent by you. So never think that way. Never think that way. Send it. This is a great story. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Perfection is achieved, not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away.